Not far from them, lifeless and on the floor, was Rampasa III. His clothes were stained dark red, and next to him sat Renner, her clothes soaked in blood. On the ground, close by, was Razor Edge. The blade of the sword was coated with blood. There was no mistaking it. This was the weapon used to kill Rampasa III. Princess. Climb. Ho, someone else laughed. A mocking laugh, probably. Climb stood between Renner and the man readied his sword. Both of them will probably die right here. To protect Renner till the end in spite of that fact was Climb's ultimate demonstration of loyalty. In front of Ain Sama, your head is raised too high up. Kneel. Climb immediately kneeled. He could not resist at all. It was more accurate to say that before he had noticed, his body had already adopted this posture. He noticed the one behind him had done the same. Renner. The image of Renner being mind-controlled flashed through his mind, and everything began to click together. You controlled Renner Sama like this. The tragedy in front of the throne. Renner was controlled and forced to kill her own father. His anger boiled over yet he still could not move. It was as though this body was no longer his. Ah, I remember. I have met with him during my duel with Gazov Strunov. Undo the command mantra. Yes, you are free. With the mental restraints removed, Climb jumped sideways to pick up Razor Edge, which was on the ground. He stood up rapidly, adjusted his breath, and adopted his stance. His opponent was the Sorcerer King. Of course, this was meaningless against the opponent who was able to kill the warrior captain at such a speed that he could not follow his movements with his eyes at all. Still, he was Renner's meat shield. What good would he be if he did not stand between them? The Sorcerer King got up from the throne and walked leisurely towards Climb. You should be grateful that a king, such as I, would be willing to personally duel with you. Ah yes, if I win, I shall be taking that sword. The Sorcerer King walked towards him without a care. He was not on guard for him at all. Anger occupied Climb's body and mind. This was all his fault. If he did not exist, peace would be the status quo, no one would have died. The princess would not have had to experience this sorrow. The Sorcerer King looked like he was sneering at him. A slash would not be able to reach him. He thought about how the warrior captain was slain. What was his best move? He held on tight to Razor Edge. The Sorcerer King took a step and at that moment climbed through Razor Edge with all of his strength. It looked like not even the Sorcerer King had expected this. As he threw the sword, he lost his balance. Climb closed the distance between them, clenched his fist, and punched him. His fist was aimed at the Sorcerer King's face. Climb. He heard Renner mournfully call out his name. Skeleton-type monsters being weak to bludgeoning damage was a well-known fact, yet he felt intense pain once his fists connected. The Sorcerer King, on the other hand, did not appear to be affected by it at all. If this were a fairy tale. The Sorcerer King extended his hand at an unbelievable speed to grab onto Climb's breastplate. He tried to escape, but he could not even pry his hand open. Passion would awake dormant power, to grant you the ability to defeat me. The Sorcerer King picked Climb up. His resistance did not have any effect, as if he was struggling against a sturdy wall. But, this is reality. Nothing so perfect would happen. He was thrown. Climb's body flew through the air for quite a while before falling to the ground. The impact of his back hitting the floor knocked the air out of him. Climb stood up in panic and looked at the Sorcerer King. After tossing Climb, he did not take another step. He did not seem to have considered making a follow-up attack. This was exuberance afforded to him by his overwhelming strength. You will die here, you are not worth saving. You, who are without talent nor ability, do not deserve salvation. However, do not despair. The Sorcerer King appeared to be looking at Climb, but also not at the same time. His eyes appeared to be looking somewhere far away. This world is unequal. The inequality you experience started the moment you were born. The birth of those with talent meant that of course, there are those born without talent. Furthermore, the environment one was born into differs. A rich family versus a poor family, even the personality of your fellow brothers and sisters matter. Those who were lucky will go on to have fulfilling lives, but those who were not, do not. However, I must reiterate, do not despair at such inequalities. The reason for this is because death is the equalizer gifted to all. That is to say, me. Only the mercy bestowed by the ruler of death to all could be regarded as absolute equality in a world riddled with inequalities. Climb could not understand what he was talking about at all. He was probably telling him to rest in peace the long way around. He could not help but be overwhelmed by his presence. He is death, a being no living thing could oppose. It was as though Climb was about to be swallowed up by the Sorcerer King's pride alone. The difference between them, on a biological level, was too great. Of course, the Sorcerer King, head of a state and one who wielded magic that could easily destroy an army, was entirely different compared to the talentless warrior that was Climb. However, the difference between them was not just so. It was like that of an ant, yearning for the skies. That was the difference between their domains. Even so, even though he knew full well that he could not win, he had made his resolve to give his all, to be Renner's meat shield, till the end of the very end. Courage surged through him. His languished heart burned once more. Yes. All of this was for Renner. For the woman who had saved him on that rainy day. For her, who saw him as human. I see. Those eyes. The Sorcerer King said something strange. He must have sensed Climb's intent to battle. The Sorcerer King exposed his defenseless back towards Climb, picked up Razor Edge which laid on the ground, and tossed it towards him. Rise up. The Sorcerer King extended one hand, and in an instant, a black sword appeared. The length of the blade was around that of the longsword. Climb stared at the Sorcerer King without raising his guard, while he picked up Razor Edge. To have left openings in this moment could not have been helped. He thought about Gaz's Duel. Right before the fight began, the Sorcerer King had said himself that weapons without adequate enchantments could not damage him, but also that this sword could kill him. Even this set of armor granted to him by Renner, which had multiple enchantments imbued on it, could not break his defense. This was a depressing fact, one he had confirmed in that strike. Climb. To Renner, who leaned towards him with worry in her eyes, Climb smiled and whispered. Princess, I will buy you some time. If you wish, please do it sooner than later. His thoughts were conveyed as Renner nodded her head. Climb created some distance between him and Renner before he raised Razor Edge. Have you bid you farewells? I wish to ask. After you kill me, will you kill the princess too? The Sorcerer King remained silent. Climb could not help but find that odd. This was not an occasion to be silent. What answered his question was a he from the Sorcerer King, a soft laughter. How shall I torment you? The best way would be to not answer your question. Sorcerer King. He swung Razor Edge, which was easily caught by the Sorcerer King's sword. After multiple strikes, the Sorcerer King remained standing where he stood. The Sorcerer King did not attack him, he was playing with him instead, like someone would do to entertain a child. However, this was fine by him. He raised Razor Edge up high and bet everything in this single strike. As before, the Sorcerer King parried his attack with that sword of pure black. This was the moment. To bet everything he had. Climb activated his martial arts. Not only that, but he had also activated the ring's ability too. At that moment, Climb's combat prowess surged significantly. In that case, because the Sorcerer King had gotten used to his usual movements, this strike was more like an ambush. He pretended to use all of his strength to swing the sword down, relaxed his muscles, and pulled the sword back with all his might the moment it was blocked. In a single stroke, he thrust it towards the red orb in the Sorcerer King's stomach. He had been thinking for a while now. That was probably the Sorcerer King's weak spot. Even if it was not, if he managed to break it, would that not also count as a form of revenge? Oof. I see, an impressive attack. The attack he had put all of his strength into, was caught dead in its tracks by the Sorcerer King with a single hand. Climb felt his shoulder burn, a moist sensation began expanding from it, and in the next moment, the heat turned into intense pain. He jumped back immediately, knowing that his shoulder had been slashed. The armor given to him by Renner was cleaved through this easily by the Sorcerer King's blade. That said, it did not appear to have weapon destruction abilities, because the armor itself did not break. He could still move his arm, but the problem was that he could no longer do the same attack he just did. The thought that he could avenge those who had fallen was but a mere dream. Could Razor Edge break a world-class item? I am very interested in the result of such an experiment. If it could damage one, that sword's value would skyrocket. That said, the Sorcerer King threw his sword, and it disappeared midair. I can afford to wait till after I kill you to run those experiments. It looked like the Sorcerer King was about to cast magic. Climb laughed. The Sorcerer King chose to use magic against someone like him, so he could not allow his opponent enough time to cast. Climb leapt. As he heard the words grasp hard, he felt intense pain, as if his body was being ripped apart from the inside. Outstanding. And then, his vision. Really. Meant.